Let's say you make a shirt. You physically plant the cotton in the ground, the cotton seed in the ground. You grow the cotton, you tend to it to have it grow. Then you pick the cotton, and then you separate the seeds from the cotton. And then you do everything that needs to be done to turn that cotton into a shirt. You mine the necessary chemicals to get the cotton to clump up together into a shirt-like consistency. You do everything, every step of the process of making a shirt. After you've made this shirt, do you now own that shirt? Well, it depends. If you are Robinson Crusoe, you're the only person in the world or in the relevant area, then ownership is a meaningless concept. If there are a bunch of people around you, then I guess you, quote, own, close quote, that shirt to the extent that the other people around you let you own it. If they don't believe that you own the shirt for whatever reason, and the mob tries to rip the shirt off your back that you made, then practically speaking, you do not own that shirt. There is no objective ownership. When you make a shirt, it doesn't physically attach to your spinal cord. There is no objective ownership of anything. All ownership is intersubjective preference. That is, you own something because everyone else agrees that you own it. And that is all that your, quote, ownership, close quote, is based on. Agreement. When you buy anything from 7-Eleven, why is it then generally agreed upon that you own what you bought? Well, when you buy slushie, did the material nature of the slushie change? Did the cup change? Did the straw change? Did the lid change? No, but since you gave the cashier some funny money, it is then perceived that you own the slushie. Land works the same way. Why do you own your home? Well, because everyone around you agrees that you do. It is the intersubjective preference that people who pay for a home own it and the land it is on. Ownership works no differently with homes than it does for the shirt on your back. If a bunch of homeowners got together to form an association, perhaps a gated community, then those homeowners collectively own the gated community and the buildings and the land that it's all on, to the extent that it is generally agreed that they do own it, both within and without the gated community. This is the restrictive covenant. If a man came up to you and tried to rip the shirt off your back, and you violently prevented him from doing so, would you be engaging in statist activity? Would you be a state for preventing someone from ripping the shirt off your back? Of course not. If a man tried to invade your home and you violently defended your home, would you be engaging in statist activity? Of course not. If a group of people had their homes collectively invaded and they banded together to drive out the invaders of the property that it is generally agreed that they own through the intersubjective preference, are they then engaging in statist activity? Of course not. A state is a person or a group of people who violently enforce a claim to property that they do not own according to standard intersubjective criteria. Let's say that in an area the homesteading principle is the agreed upon method of ownership. That is, if you are farming an area to a certain extent, with provisions for how long you can leave areas fallow and how many improvements you need to make for ranching land, or whatever the specifics are to say that you then homesteaded that area. If you homesteaded an area, then the people around you will agree that you own the land that you homesteaded. This is the homesteading principle. In this case, if the homesteading principle was prevalent, then a state would be a person or a group of people who claim property that they have not homesteaded. They do not have to acquire ownership of anything, land, material, in the same way that everyone else has to. And that is essentially what we mean when we say state. A person or a group of people who can exercise ownership over property that they have not acquired through the prevalent intersubjective criteria of ownership. So while Bob may have to farm land for his claim to be taken seriously by everyone else around him, a state can tax anyone over a certain geographic territory without altering that land in any way. This is what I mean when I say state. And when I say anarchist, I mean opposition to this hypocrisy, to this ownership hypocrisy, to this state. Unfortunately, many anarchists have conflated the violent enforcement of intersubjectively agreed upon property with the violent enforcement of empty claims. A private city is not a state for the same reason a gated community is not a state, for the same reason that violently defending your home does not make you a state, and for the same reason defending the shirt on your back does not make you a state. A state is the person or persons who violates the intersubjective consensus and tries to steal your shirt or claim your land that is agreed upon that you own through the intersubjective consensus. If you oppose a restrictive covenant on philosophical grounds, then you also oppose self-defense altogether. If violently enforcing a generally accepted land claim makes you a state, then so does violently enforcing your generally accepted ownership of the shirt on your back. If you oppose a restrictive covenant just because it leaves a bad taste in your mouth, that is, it conflicts with your preferences, then just say that, but don't try to pretend it has anything to do with ethics. To oppose a restrictive covenant on practical grounds is to oppose the very thing that will prevent a state, as I have defined it, from reforming. And to oppose a restrictive covenant on philosophical grounds requires one to oppose self-defense in its entirety in order to be consistent.